I could still smell the flowers on my bouquet, jasmine and rose, sweet, nauseating, mocking me. My father Luis's hand slipped from my arm like it was burning him. His voice shook when he spoke, and I felt my heart crack open right there in front of everyone. "I can't walk you in," he whispered. The organist's fingers fumbled on the keys. Guests turned in their seats, whispering like rustling leaves. I stood there in my white dress, frozen, confused, humiliated. This was supposed to be the happiest moment of my life. My father was supposed to be proud. Instead, he looked terrified. His eyes kept darting toward the main church doors, like he was watching for something. Or someone. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. The veil felt heavy on my face, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't escape. "Dad, what are you talking about?" I managed to say, but my voice came out small and broken. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at those doors, his jaw clenched tight. Something was very, very wrong. My own breathing echoed inside my veil. I reached for his arm again, desperate for answers, but he stepped back. The lace on my dress scratched my skin. My makeup felt too heavy. The air in the church felt thick and suffocating. "Dad, please. Why are you doing this?" I begged. His eyes finally met mine, and I saw something I'd never seen before: fear. Pure, raw fear. My father, the man who fixed engines with his bare hands, who never backed down from anything, looked like he was about to shatter. "I'm trying to protect you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Protect me? From what? From my own wedding? Nothing made sense. Behind me, I heard Daniel shifting nervously. My fiancé was waiting at the altar, probably wondering what was happening. The guests were starting to murmur louder now. Someone coughed. A baby cried in the back. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't cry. Not yet. Protect me from what? I asked. He didn't answer. My mind flashed back to a different time, a simpler time. Warm sunlight on the dusty schoolyard. The gentle whistle of Mateo's knife carving wood. I could see his hands in my memory, aged, steady, kind. He'd sit on his wooden crate outside the school gates every afternoon, selling small carved toys to children. I remembered the smell of wood shavings mixing with steam from my coffee cup. The thump of kids running past, laughing. Mateo always smiled at me, always asked how my day was. He felt like peace in a world that kept rushing forward too fast. I'd buy coffee from the cart next to his stall, and we'd talk. Just small talk at first, weather, students, life. Then deeper conversations. He told me about his daughter who'd passed away years ago. About his wife who'd left him. About mistakes he couldn't undo. I never understood why I felt so drawn to him. Why his presence felt so necessary. Behind me now, the church doors creaked open. A cold breeze swept through the aisle. I turned, heart pounding, expecting to see a late guest. But it wasn't a guest. I could still see Mateo's empty stall in my mind, the overturned crate, the cold pavement where he used to sit. One day, he'd just vanished. No goodbye, no explanation. Just gone. I'd felt a strange grief over his disappearance, the kind you feel when you lose someone who mattered more than you realized. The breeze blew paper wrappers across the empty spot where he'd sat. Distant car horns honked. There was just this hollow silence where his laughter used to be. I'd asked around. Nobody knew where he went. Some people said he got sick. Others said he moved away. One vendor whispered that he'd gotten into trouble, but wouldn't say what kind. I'd tried to forget about him, but I couldn't. His absence felt wrong, like a piece of my daily life had been ripped away without warning. Now, standing in my wedding dress with my father refusing to walk me down the aisle, I thought of Mateo again. I didn't know why. Maybe because both men had somehow abandoned me when I needed them most. My father was holding something in his jacket pocket. I could see the outline of it, small, wooden. Mateo's unfinished carving. I remembered the night my father found out I'd been spending time with Mateo. His voice had trembled, not with anger, but with fear. He'd grabbed my shoulders, eyes wild. "Stay away from him," he'd said, louder than he'd ever spoken to me before. I could smell the motor oil on his jacket. The screen door slammed behind me as I stormed out, furious and confused. My father never yelled. Never. But that night, he'd been almost violent in his desperation. "Why?" I'd shouted back. "He's just a kind old man." "You don't understand," Luis had said, his voice breaking. "I promised your mother." My mother. She died when I was 2 years old. I barely remembered her. Just flashes, her laugh, her perfume, the warmth of her arms. My father never talked about her. It hurt him too much. So hearing him mention her that night had stopped me cold. "Promised her what?" I'd asked softly. He'd just shaken his head, tears in his eyes. "Stay away from him. Please." I'd obeyed. I'd stopped visiting Mateo's stall. And then he disappeared. Now I wondered if my father had something to do with it. Back in the church dressing room earlier, the whispers had felt like needles in my skin. My bridesmaids exchanged nervous glances. The makeup artist kept dabbing at my face, trying to hide the redness in my eyes. "Is everything okay?" my cousin whispered. I'd nodded, even though nothing was okay. I could see lipstick smudges on tissues scattered across the vanity. Bright lights made everything feel too exposed, too raw. Muffled footsteps echoed outside the door, groomsmen pacing, probably wondering why we were running late. People always filled silence with stories. I'd heard the rumors about my father and me. That we fought. That he didn't approve of Daniel. That our family was broken somehow. None of it was true, but people loved to gossip anyway. The wedding music had started too early, jolting me from my thoughts. The bridal march played before I was ready, before my father and I had even walked to the entrance. Someone had messed up the timing. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake, maybe someone wanted to rush this moment before something could stop it. Now, standing in the aisle with my father's hand gone from my arm, I realized the music had been a warning. The church doors burst open fully. A silhouette stood there, backlit by harsh afternoon sunlight. I couldn't see the face, but the shape, I knew it somehow. My breath clawed up my throat. The guests gasped. Murmurs rippled through the pews like waves. Some people stood up, craning their necks to see. The organist stopped playing mid-note, the silence suddenly deafening. The figure stepped forward slowly, hesitantly. Sunlight outlined his frame, broad shoulders, slightly hunched. He wore simple clothes, not a suit. His hands trembled at his sides. My father made a choked sound beside me. I turned to look at him, and his face had gone completely white. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "No," Luis whispered. "Not now. Please, not now." But the figure kept walking forward, each step echoing on the stone floor. My heart hammered so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I gripped my bouquet tighter, jasmine and rose petals trembling. The figure's face came into focus as he moved out of the sunlight. Mateo. It was Mateo. Older, thinner, but unmistakably him. And he was looking directly at me with tears streaming down his face. I remembered our lunches together so clearly now. Simple meals, bread, fruit, shared stories. Mateo would pull out a small cloth bundle from his bag and we'd sit on the bench near his stall, eating and talking. His confessions had felt fatherly, even though I'd never said it aloud. He'd tell me about his regrets, his lost chances, his daughter who died. Sometimes he'd stop mid-sentence and just stare at me with this look I couldn't understand, part sadness, part wonder. I could still hear the crunch of apples, his soft coughs, the smell of varnish on the tiny toys he carved. He'd been working on a bird for weeks. He said it was special, but he never finished it. "Why a bird?" I'd asked once. "Because birds are free," he'd said quietly. "And freedom is the greatest gift you can give someone you love." I hadn't understood then. But now, watching him walk down the aisle of my wedding like a man walking to his execution, I started to understand. Mateo stepped closer. Daniel stood frozen at the altar. My father grabbed my arm, trying to pull me back. "Don't," Luis said desperately. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Daniel appeared beside me suddenly, his hand shaking as he took mine. His cologne mixed with the scent of my bouquet, making me dizzy. My pulse pounded in my ears so loud I could barely hear him speak. "Your father asked me about the wedding music weeks ago," Daniel whispered urgently. "He wanted to make sure everything was timed perfectly. He said it was important." I looked at Daniel, confused. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I think he was planning something," Daniel said, glancing nervously at Luis. I think he knew this was going to happen. Secrets. Everyone had been keeping secrets from me. My father, Daniel, probably half the people in this church. The weight of hidden truths pressed down on my chest until I thought I'd collapse. Mateo reached the front pews now. He stopped there, hands clasped in front of him like he was praying. People stared at him with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Who was this shabby old man interrupting a wedding? But I knew who he was. I'd always known, somehow, that he was more than just a toy seller. The question was, what was he to me? And why had my father been so desperate to keep him away? My father stepped into the aisle, blocking Mateo's path like a wall. The two men faced each other, and the air between them crackled with tension. I could hear my father's sharp breath, see Mateo's trembling hands. "You can't be here," Luis said, his voice hard but shaking. "I have to be," Mateo replied softly. "I can't let her get married without knowing." "Knowing what?" I demanded, stepping forward. My dress rustled loudly in the silent church. "What don't I know?" Both men looked at me. In their eyes, I saw the same thing, love and fear mixed together in a way that made my stomach twist. "Please," Luis said to Mateo, his voice breaking. "Don't do this to her. Not today." "She deserves the truth," Mateo said, tears rolling down his weathered face. "I've lived with this lie for 30 years. I can't anymore." 30 years. My entire life. The room felt like it was spinning. I reached out to steady myself on the nearest pew, my bouquet falling from my hands. Jasmine and rose petals scattered across the floor. Mateo called my name then. "Sofia." The way he said it, like a prayer, like a confession, made something inside me crack wide open. My hands shook as I remembered the envelope. The one Mateo had tried to give me months ago, before he disappeared. I'd been too scared to take it, and he'd left it on my car windshield instead. I'd found it under my wiper blade, a simple white envelope with my name written in shaky handwriting. For weeks, I'd carried it in my purse, unable to open it, unable to throw it away. The fear of answers I wasn't ready for kept me paralyzed. Eventually, I'd hidden it in my bedroom drawer, buried under old photographs and letters. But I never forgot about it. Sometimes late at night, I'd take it out and hold it, feeling the weight of secrets inside. I could still remember the crisp texture of the paper, the faint scent of old ink. Sometimes truth sits inches away, waiting for courage to open it. But courage is hard to find when you're afraid the truth might destroy everything you thought you knew. Now, standing in this church with Mateo in front of me and my father falling apart beside me, I wished I'd opened that envelope. Maybe then I wouldn't be ambushed on my wedding day. Maybe then I could have prepared myself for whatever was coming. After Mateo had disappeared, I'd finally opened the envelope. My hands had trembled so badly the photograph inside nearly slipped through my fingers. My mother. Smiling. Young. Beautiful. Standing beside Mateo. The edges of the photo were yellowed with age, the texture worn from being handled too many times. There was a faint musk of old keepsakes, like it had been stored in a box for decades. My mother's hand rested on Mateo's arm. They stood in front of what looked like a small house. They looked happy. Close. Behind the photo was a date written in faded ink, 31 years ago. 1 year before I was born. I'd stared at that photo for hours, my mind refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. My mother with Mateo. My mother, who'd married Luis. My mother, who'd died when I was 2, taking all her secrets with her. I'd hidden the photo back in the envelope and tried to pretend I'd never seen it. But you can't unsee something like that. The image burned itself into my brain, haunting me every time I looked at my father. Now Mateo stood in my wedding, and I understood why that photo existed. But I needed to hear him say it. I pulled the envelope from where I'd hidden it in my dress, tucked against my ribs, close to my heart. My fingers shook as I unfolded the photograph. I walked up to my father and held it in front of his face. "Explain this," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Right now." Luis's face crumbled when he saw the photo. His strong mechanic's hands came up to cover his mouth. Tears burned hot on my cheeks, but I didn't wipe them away. I needed answers more than I needed pride. "Please, mija," he whispered, using the nickname he'd called me since childhood. "Not like this." Then how? I demanded. You had years to tell me. Years. And you chose today to fall apart. My wedding day. The guests were fully invested now, leaning forward in their seats like they were watching a telenovela. Some looked scandalized. Others looked fascinated. A few looked sympathetic. Mateo stepped forward, slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Let me explain, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Please, Sofia. Let me tell you everything. My father grabbed my arm. Don't listen to him, but I pulled away. I'm listening, I said to Mateo. Mateo knelt right there on the church floor, his knees hitting the stone with a painful thud. His rough palms pressed together like he was begging for forgiveness. His breath came in shallow gasps. I loved your mother, he began, his voice shaking. We were together before she met Luis. We were young, stupid, and in love. We talked about getting married, having children, building a life. I could see the guilt etched into every line of his face. A lifetime of regret had carved itself into his features, making him look ancient. But I made mistakes, he continued. I drank too much. I couldn't keep a steady job. I was angry at the world. Your mother deserved better than me, and she knew it. My father stood beside me, silent now, tears streaming down his face. She met Luis, Mateo said, looking at my father with something like gratitude. He was everything I wasn't, stable, kind, hardworking. She fell in love with him. And I understood. I stepped aside because I wanted her to be happy. But I prompted, because I could hear the unspoken word hanging in the air. Mateo's face twisted with pain. But she was already pregnant when she left me. The church exploded with gasps. Everyone started talking at once. My bridesmaids clutched each other. Daniel's mother stood up, face red with shock. My aunt started crying. The guests divided into whispered conversations, some pointing at me, some at Mateo, some at my father. I felt like I was standing in the center of a storm I'd never asked for. The room split down the middle, those who judged, those who pitied, and those who just wanted to see what would happen next. Scattered petals lay crushed under my shoes. My veil felt like a cage. My dress felt like a costume for a role I no longer wanted to play. You're saying. I couldn't finish the sentence. My throat closed up. I'm your biological father, Mateo said quietly. But Luis is your real father in every way that matters. People judge without knowing the battles you're fighting. They see drama and scandal. They don't see three people trying to love each other the best way they knew how. They don't see 30 years of sacrifice and silence. I looked at Luis. My father. The man who'd raised me, taught me to ride a bike, walked me through heartbreak, stayed up with me when I was sick. The man who'd been my entire world. Is it true? I asked him. He nodded, unable to speak. I stepped toward Mateo. Mateo reached into his jacket with trembling hands and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He unfolded it carefully, revealing the wooden bird he'd been carving all those years ago. It was finally finished. He placed it in my hands. The wood was smooth, polished, beautiful. It felt warm, like it had been held close to someone's heart for years. There was a faint scent of cedar. Your mother wanted you to have this, Mateo said, his voice breaking. She asked me to make it before she died. She said even though I couldn't be your father publicly, I'd always be part of you. And she wanted you to know that someday. Even unfinished gifts can carry entire stories. But this one was complete now. The bird's wings were spread wide, captured in the moment of flight. Free. Just like Mateo had said all those years ago. She made Luis promise to take care of you, Mateo continued. To love you like his own. And he did. Better than I ever could have. I held the bird against my chest, feeling the weight of 30 years of love and sacrifice pressed into wood. Why didn't she tell me before she died? I whispered. She was going to, Luis finally spoke, his voice hoarse. She got sick so fast. She died before she could explain everything. She made me promise to tell you when you were old enough to understand. But I kept putting it off. I was afraid you'd hate me. I was afraid I'd lose you. Luis broke completely then. My strong, steady father crumbled, his shoulders shaking with sobs I'd never seen before. He collapsed onto a pew, head in his hands, crying like his heart was being ripped out. I didn't want her to lose another parent, He choked out between sobs. She'd already lost her mother. If she knew the truth, she might want to know Mateo instead of me. I couldn't bear it. The echo of his voice filled the silent church. Every eye was on us, but I didn't care anymore. This wasn't about them. This was about three broken people trying to make sense of an impossible situation. I knelt beside Luis, my white dress pooling around us. I took his rough mechanic's hands in mine. They were shaking. "You're my father," I told him firmly. "You raised me. You loved me. Nothing changes that." "But Luis started. "He gave me life," I interrupted. "But you gave me everything else. You taught me what love looks like. What sacrifice looks like. What it means to be a parent. Hiding the truth doesn't protect love, it burdens it. But I understood why he'd done it. Fear makes us do impossible things, even when we know they're wrong." I looked at Mateo, still kneeling on the floor, waiting. Mateo's tears hit the church floor in steady drops. He looked smaller now, older, like telling the truth had drained something vital from him. "I am your biological father," he said clearly, so everyone could hear. "But I stepped aside because I loved your mother enough to let her be happy. Luis was the better man. He could give you the life I couldn't." My heartbeat thundered in my throat. Reality was bending, reshaping itself into something I didn't recognize. But somewhere inside me, something softened. A puzzle piece clicking into place. This explained why Mateo had watched me so carefully all those years. Why his eyes always held that strange mixture of love and loss. Why my father had been so terrified of me getting close to him. "For 30 years, I watched you from a distance," Mateo continued. "Luis sent me photos sometimes. Let me know how you were doing. It was our secret. The three of us, me, Luis, and your mother before she died, we agreed you deserved a stable life. But you sold toys outside my school," I said. "You talked to me?" "I couldn't stay away completely," he admitted. "I just wanted to know you. Even if you'd never know the truth about me. Fatherhood is not only who gives you life, but who gives you love. I'd been loved by two fathers in different ways. One from a distance, one up close. Both had sacrificed everything for me." I turned to Luis. Luis looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. 30 years of fear, devotion, failure, and sacrifice were written across his face. He'd carried this secret like a boulder on his back, and I could see it had nearly crushed him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, mija. I made so many wrong choices. I should have told you years ago. I should have let you know Mateo when you were old enough to understand. But I was terrified you'd love him more than me." His rough mechanic hands shook in mine, hands that had fixed 1,000 engines, built me a treehouse, held me when I cried, taught me how to change a tire. "I thought if you knew the truth, you'd see me as a lie," he said, voice breaking. "Like everything we had was fake. But it wasn't fake. My love for you has always been real. From the moment your mother put you in my arms, you were mine. You were my daughter. Nothing else mattered." The pain of loving someone so much you make the wrong choices, I finally understood it. Love isn't perfect. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes it makes us do things that hurt the people we're trying to protect. But love is also relentless. It doesn't give up. It fights even when it shouldn't. "You are my father," I told him again, squeezing his hands. "And nothing will ever change that." I stood there in my wedding dress, my makeup ruined, my heart cracked open. Daniel approached carefully, asking with his eyes if I still wanted to go through with the ceremony. I nodded. I did. But not the way we'd planned. I walked back to where Luis sat, and I extended my hand to him. Then I turned and extended my other hand to Mateo. "I want both of you to walk me down the aisle," I said. The church went silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another person. Then suddenly everyone was applauding, some crying, some smiling. I took both their arms, the man who'd raised me and the man who'd given me life. They flanked me on either side, two imperfect fathers who'd loved me the best way they knew how. Warmth spread through me from both sides. The organ swelled with music. Light flooded through the stained glass windows, painting us in colors of blue and gold and rose. Life doesn't always give us perfect families. But sometimes love gives us the courage to forgive, and that's what makes a family whole. I walked toward Daniel, toward my future, carrying the truth of my past. And instead of grief, I felt gratitude. For 2 fathers. For a mother who'd loved me enough to make impossible choices. For the messy, complicated, beautiful truth. The wooden bird pressed against my bouquet, its wings spread wide. Free. Finally free.